Hey, you guys, it's my absolute great pleasure to have on the line Jim Willie from GoldenJackass.com. You guys have heard Jim Willie before. With all credit to our good mutual friend Tekoa De Silva from Bull Market Thinking, Tekoa got us in touch with each other, and Tekoa, thank you for that, because, Jim, I've not missed one of the interviews you've done with Tekoa over the years, not one. And for the audience who may not be familiar with your work, you've got a Ph.D. in statistics from Carnegie Mellon, and you're the real deal. Welcome to the program, Jim.
Well, it's good to be here. I just hope I can restrain myself.
There's so much to talk about, Jim. What I want to do is I want to concentrate on your most recent article. It's called Pathogenesis of Central Bank Ruin. You're saying that the next ground zero is Italy. And I'm not going to sit here and read everything you wrote, but I do want to quote this. You say, Goldman Knights arrive to the rescue in secret appointments, but crowds reject them as unelected leaders. Ignore the term technocrat given to both Monti and newly installed Mario Draghi at the Euro Central Bank. They are syndicate loyalists. And you're saying that the contagion will now spread from Italy to France and Spain.
Yes, well, it was, almost 2 years ago that Greece erupted, early 2010, shortly after Dubai. And they haven't fixed anything with Greece. In fact, all of their solutions have, like the austerity measures and cut back on the government spending and raise taxes and sell prized assets. Nothing has done anything to constructively fix the situation. I call the austerity measures poison pills because they're designed with backward motives to destroy the economy, not to fix it, to give the appearance of improving the budget situation when all they really do is slow the economy down and make the budget deficits worse. Let me just ask a simple question. Is Greece's budget better than it was a year ago? No, not a bit. And it's by design. It's to topple the system.
That's right.
I'll go so far as to say that the last couple of years, the plan has been to take down Europe, not fix it. So when these technocrats come in, it's not to fix it, not to repair the budgets, not to install sanity in with the spending and capital formation. It's to destroy it in order to bring about, the open door for the technocrats. Isn't it amazing? I was marveling at how they described Monti and Draghi and said, they have very solid background from U.S. universities, strong economics and finance background, as opposed to politicians. Okay, well, I'd rather a knucklehead politician than a Goldman Sachs lieutenant.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, they're Goldman Sachs insiders, and this technocracy, which is rolling out around the globe, is to be embraced by the people, Jim. Anybody like us that would have a problem with this and want to preserve the sovereignty of their own nation is a nutter, a conspiracy theorist. What is the best way out of this, or is there no way out of this?
Well, we've got to follow what's happening regarding this contagion. If you look at what's going on, Greece erupted and never got better, despite all their fixes. What does that tell you? Well, they're not fixing things. Where did it go next? It went to Italy. Let's hearken back a year to 2 years ago. What was the prevailing opinion in consensus about Italy? Their ratio of cumulative debt to their GDP looked much better. Their budget deficit as a percentage of the entire budget looked much better. And I kept saying, nonsense. Italy is 3 times bigger in economy and their debt compared to Greece, Portugal, and Ireland combined. 3 countries combined, triple it, that's Italy. I kept saying, no, the volume of what has to be funded for Italian debt is so big that it won't be there in the bond market, and you're going to get a crisis in Italy, and the clowns and the hacks would come back again and say, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. The ratios look good. This is a fundamental issue. I said, no, it's not a fundamental issue. It's a liquidity issue, and the liquidity is going to drain out of the sovereign bonds, and now we got it in Italy. The big critical alarm level is the 7% 10-year yield, and Italy went past it. And remember when Draghi, the other technocrat, the new central bank leader for the Euro Central Bank, Draghi, when he first got in there, said, no, we're not going to be buying a bunch. We're not going to be buying many of these sovereign bonds. We don't want Italy's and Spanish Italy and Spain government bonds. We're not in the business of bailing out as last resort. So we saw the Italian go towards 7% on the 10-year, and you saw the Spanish bond go up, and I think it got into the low sixes or so. And now they've relaxed a little bit. My catchphrase is, I've gotten a couple of emails a few emails from friends and clients alike, and they say, I don't get it. The Euro Central Bank is buying bonds, but the Italian bond yield's still getting worse. And I said, yeah, the Euro Central Bank is reluctantly buying truckloads while the banks are selling boatloads. We're getting to a point here where the entire government bond market is the central banks. They're monetizing the entire sovereign bond market. And later they're going to have to admit it and recapitalize not only the sovereign bond market, they're going to have to recapitalize the banks that are all ruined from having too much of these sovereign bonds.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. You note in your latest article that, quote, the day after exit, the nation will suffer ruin of their banking system, forcing a rapid nationalization and a reverted currency. The end result will be sovereign debt default and pure chaos across the continent, which then will lead to the doom of the dollar. I mean, anybody that thinks we're isolated from all this because the dollar is going up as the euro suffers troubles is deluding themselves, right, Jim?
Well, yeah, they're not only deluding themselves, what they're doing is they're engaging in the propaganda coming out of Wall Street. So you got the megaphones saying, oh, Europe's in trouble, buy U.S. stocks. Oh, Europe is in trouble, they got big bank trouble, buy U.S. stocks. Oh, Europe, they're falling apart, the union's a mess, they're trying to come up with solutions, they can't come up with it, buy U.S. stocks. It's moronic. When this flash event happened, by the way, let's just back up a little bit. I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe it was 3, but the Federal Reserve woke up one morning and was pretty much, I think, woken up in the middle of the night with a lot of phone calls, and they came out with a statement that really implied that $1 trillion worth of a dollar swap facility credit line would be made available to the European banks and European Central Bank. Okay, I did some inquiries and found out, why'd they do that? I mean, I knew the answer in rough cuts. There were some banks that were in some serious trouble, an hour overnight, their day, and they had emergencies. There were liquidity shortages. There were insolvency problems. They're marking to the market, and who's forcing a lot of these reserve requirements and marking to the market suddenly, but the Bank for International Settlements. So again, you've got another mega force that's trying to break the system, I think, so they can install Goldman Sachs in there. But what was about to happen if the Fed did not make this near $1 trillion credit line available? The answer is 20 Lehmans. 20 Lehmans. So all they really do is bought a little time. I got a funny little phrase with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, say, it's amazing how little $1 trillion buys anymore for helping banks. And it's also amazing how little time it buys. So they put out $1 trillion, and you hear the data of $50 billion was tapped right away by 6 big European banks. Well, try 10 times that when you count all the stuff they don't talk about, like the derivatives that they're trying to cover. You go back to TARP, a lot of what was covered was nasty, dirty, swill, toxic paper and derivatives that they don't want people to know about.
Well, if I may, I was just going to jump in and say, that's right. As it relates to the derivatives and the $90 trillion that belong to J.P. Morgan alone, maybe we can talk about what you write in the article. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the great gold price divergence. I mean, the gold market, as you write, has gone into the twilight zone. Quote, they are tapping into the virtually unlimited dollar swap facility using borrowed money to lease gold. The powers have made the lease rate negative in order to attract borrowers. The supply of gold has come from both Libya and Greece. These corrupted bankers require more gold, thus more wars and more victim nations.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, isn't it? Isn't it amazing the times we live in? We're told that Gaddafi had to go because the Arab Spring just brought the spotlight of all the nasty assault to liberty in Libya.
Yeah.
I have a catchphrase that I use with my father and families and family and friends. I say they say to me, "Why do you think there's nothing true on the major news, Jim?" I said, "No, that's not true. It's only 80% false."
Well, what I like to tell people, Jim, is you have to go to the sources. You have to trust the trees that have borne fruit over time. You've borne fruit. Tekoa's borne fruit. So many other people out there have borne fruit. You need to have discernment to figure out what those sources are. And I think most of the people that are listening to us right now know what those sources are. So let's talk a little bit about the great gold price divergence. And if you want to tie that into what's going on with MF Global, please do. But run with it. Tell us what we're up against here, will you?
Well, the Libyan war, I don't like Gaddafi. He was a son of a bitch. Let's be plain. He's responsible for building a canal system, the most modern and wonderful tribute to his legacy is the canal system to deliver water, fresh water, all across, or at least in Libya. All right, but he also had $90 billion in London, European, and New York banks. It's been frozen. You think that comes in handy, perhaps, for the insolvent banks in Western Europe, London, and New York? But he also, in their bank, Gaddafi had a lot of secured wealth. I got to harken back. In March, we were told that Hosni Mubarak of Egypt had a lot of money and property stored around the world. Gaddafi had about $90 billion tucked away in Europe, London, and New York. That's been frozen. I remember after he was dead, one of the stories came out, what will be needed for the Gaddafi money to be unfrozen? And they came up with about 7 or 10 different requirements, and I thought, why not make them 80 requirements, because they're not going to be met. They'll never unfreeze that money and give it to what they call, now there's a legitimate coalition government in Libya. No, Gaddafi also had 144 metric tons of gold sitting in London. Wow. So that and the 111 metric tons that Greece had to forfeit, that's being used now to dump on the market or to make available for leasing because, let's face it, if you know anything about the gold market, you know that every bar of gold has 2 to 3 uses where they use it in multiple places and sell it more than once. So we've got duplicate sales. This is bringing new meaning to the word rehypothecation. I've had a forecast, I've maintained this now for 18 months, that when the feces hits the fan in full force, you're going to see a divergence take place where COMEX runs out of metal and the price goes down, not up, because it's thoroughly corrupted and its corruption will become visible in full view to the most casual observer.
Thanks for watching part 1 of my interview with Jim Willie. Don't miss part 2 as we talk about what really happened with MF Global.